So these are the limited edition germanium acid fuzz modules from Kasleder, or Kasleder. I tend to not say things right, we're aware of this. We've got a sustain control, and this is the first gain stage after the input on the fuzz. And it's sort of an impedance leveler, and you can add an extra gain boost and a lot of limiting, which can work great for boosting up lower levels as well. We've got CV input 1, which directly affects the sustain. The next stage in the signal adds actual fuzz to the input, and this has got the fuzz knob and CV input 2. You can take a simple sine wave or a triangle and make it more hairy or grainy, crunch up drum breaks or big synth chords, and we'll look at a range of inputs through the video. And we've also got a feedback, and once you've had enough of all the brightness and the sort of fuzzy textures that you get, you can flick the switch on and start to increase the feedback knob, and this actually works as a dampen sort of effect. It sort of shaves off some of that top end, and we'll see on the oscilloscope that it sort of rounds off the edges in the wave. We've got a final clean gain stage, which is simply an output volume. Like lots of other modules though, the input volume really affects the sound, like it would driving a filter or other processors. So I've got a VCA before my input. My input is coming into a multiple and then going across into both modules. The limited edition, which is the lime yellowy coloured edition, features 2 new old stock germanium transistors and provides a bit of a warmer and softer sound, but we can still take this pretty bonkers, which we'll do in the video. And then the classic or black version is a hybrid edition that features 1 new old stock germanium and 1 vintage 1960s silicon transistor. And that provides a slightly more modern and bright sound. So it just depends on what you want to do. I've got both inputs on both modules, as I said, and both outputs on a mixer, so we can fade between throughout the video. Let's have a simple triangle wave and explore some of the tones, just changing the knobs. Here's my input sound. And you can see on the oscilloscope, bottom row is my input sound unaffected, top row is my mixer's output. So in the mixer, you can hear that triangle, that's the input. Let's start with the black version. And we'll add some sustain. And fuzz. And the fuzz, feedback and sustain are really interactive, so let's play around with those together. Flick the feedback on that I've turned up. Notice that instantly dampens the sound. Volume, as I said, simple volume control. Let's turn this down in the mixer and go over to the second lime edition. So you can still really fuzz up that triangle. Dampen it with feedback. But it's not quite as full on and harsh. So let's put the fuzz and sustain around 12, feedback off. We'll do the same on the black module. I'm going to fade up between the two so you can hear the difference. Here's the black version and the lime version. The black version again. Let's go higher sustain, lower fuzz. To the lime version, black version. So they're not hugely different, and it depends which tone you like. Let's use some different patch examples and some different input sources, and I'll use both throughout, and you can decide which one is the one for you. Let's check out some synth chords. And for anyone that's played fuzz pedals with, say, a guitar, will know that the more musically dense chords that have maybe thirds and sevenths in, as opposed to just power chords with octaves and fifths, start to really break up and crunch up that fuzz, and that's what we're going to get here. So here's the input sound. We've got some super saws going through a resonant filter, so this movement and a little bit of reverb on the back of the sound as well will give the fuzz plenty to go at. So this is the softer Lime edition, smashing the hell out of the chords still. Let's take the settings down. We can soften that with a dampening effect that the feedback gives us. So I really like that crunching grit and sort of thick warmth that comes from this one. Let's set the black edition as close as we can and see what sort of sound we get. This is quite similar. Let's turn down the feedback and check out some of the harsher tones. So we can warm up those chords, get a little bit extra grit, or get this really thick and fuzzy. So let's check out some drums. And you can check out my sound diary video that's online to check out running the Korg Volca Beats directly into the unit. But here's some acoustic drums, some basic programmed sort of breakbeat type stuff. Here's the dry sound. Fairly simple, compressed, room reverb, standard acoustic drum stuff. We'll start with the black module. So that's pretty heavy even with everything turned down. Let's back off the input signal and see if we can clean it up a bit. Get these sort of like glitchy cutting in and out type sounds, which are quite cool. Let's play with the settings with this lower input volume. I really like that cutting in and out glitchy sound. Let's mix that against the original dry signal and see what we get. A nice sort of fuzzy, hairy character in the background. Let's turn up the input signal to the fuzz and keep the dry signal mixed in. This is just the black fuzz module. Dry signal's now gone. That more muted dampened tone with the feedback's quite cool, so let's check out some dry signal mixed in to get a bit more definition back in the top end. So that does a good job of really thickening and fattening everything up. Let's move over to the Lime module and we'll get rid of the dry signal. Absolute destruction. So a slightly softer sound from the yellow lime edition that's got 2 germanium transistors in, and a slightly harder sound from the black version that's got the silicon transistor and the germanium transistors. But both can still completely smash these to bits or provide more subtle warmth that works great mixing in under the dry sound. Let's check out some electronic drums. Okay, so sticking with drums, I've got some electronic drums this time, fairly standard 808 techno type thing going on. Let's check out the dry sound and then both the fuzz modules. That should be a fairly familiar sound to most people. Let's start with the lime module. Everything turned down. Nice bit of drive, let's mix the dry signal in with that. So they work really well together just for a thicker and fatter sound. Let's play around with the settings. And some feedback. I'm going to get rid of the dry sound. I'm going to set both modules the same and flick over to the black one. A little harsher, a little bit more square maybe. Let's check out no feedback. So this is the black one currently, and now the lime one. A little more noise from the lime one. And from the lime one, back to the black one. Definitely the more squared off one of the two. And a bit of the dry signal just to see how this might work in a production or a patch. We've got a saw wave coming from mutable instrument Tides and another one coming from the seesaw mode on braids. And these are coming into the black acid fuzz, hard panned left, and the lime edition fuzz, hard panned right. These are going into the stereo multi-mode filter from Happy Nerding, and I'm taking both low pass outputs as my final output. Now before we hit the actual fuzz modules, I've got both my saw waves going into 2 channels of a micro VCA from IntelliGel. Let's turn up the bias on the VCA and see how that input gain affects both of these with everything turned down. So you can hear how those square off and clip differently when we're taking different input levels. You can play into this sort of squaring off and clipping and create an almost PWM-like effect by modulating the input level. So I'm going to turn the bias down on the VCAs and turn up an LFO on each of the channels. And then I'm going to add bias back into each channel. So we're already getting some nice trippy effects. I'm going to play around with the fuzz modules. We can dampen that out with the feedback. Let's add some LFOs to the fuzz modules. So there's one side moving even more, and some more LFOs onto the other side. Drop that down in pitch. It's got this big stereo moving fuzz. I'm going to play a pitch sequence into both of my oscillators. And I've got an envelope triggered alongside this for the stereo filter. So with richer, louder moving inputs like saw waves, the fuzz isn't as obvious as it is on something like drums or chords, as we've seen earlier in the video. But it's really thick and fat. Both together are great for stereo. You could of course hit the fuzz early on in a patch and still create a stereo patch, or go mono. But as I've got both to hand, I thought why not go stereo, we'll listen to both. I'll play around with both the fuzz and the filter. We can hear that swirling change in fuzz with the CV with the feedback up higher. Turning the filter back up full. You can hear how both versions of the acid fuzz really square up that signal to something more square-like, and again we've got that almost PWM-like movement with the change in input volume. So for that last bit of the video, make sure you are listening in stereo, and we're going to end by using some CV at the audio input and see how we can mangle some sounds out of that. So for this last part of the patch, we're going to look at putting CV through what should really be a sort of audio input for the fuzz, but we can process CV through it, while it sort of heavily clamps down on these voltages. There's a great manual that comes with the acid fuzz printed in the box, and it suggests this sort of CV destruction patch. So let's explore using CV, and we're going to use a triangle LFO into the input of the module and see what we get. So first of all, here's a chord sound from Akimi's Castle. This is my triangle LFO straight into the Volt per octave. Wide ranging, full triangle LFO, and you can see in the little video in the corner the rate of that and the frequency knob that I'm going to be tweaking, which is Tides from Mutable Instruments. Now, plugging that into the input of the fuzz and taking the fuzz to the Volt per octave on Akimi's Castle. As it stands, we're not getting much at all, although a little bit of warbles coming through. This range has been heavily suppressed by the fuzz. Let's play with the settings and see what we can get. And the feedback. So related but severely mangled and destroyed CV, which sounds great. Let's slow down the rate of the LFO. I'm actually going to patch the output back into the CV inputs. Let's try the sustain. Increase the rate of the LFO. I'm going to patch the input into the fuzz CV. Be sure to check out Kasleder, however you say it. I'm not known for particularly pronouncing things or having good diction. Kasleder. Go check them out. Both of these acid fuzz modules are by them. And also go check out Analogue Zone. Great shop, they do lots of event footage. and they help bring this to life. They sort of collaborated and are involved with these modules. So check out Analogue Zone as well. Hit like and subscribe if you'd like more videos every week, and check the Patreon link below if you'd like to support me making these videos.